You worthless little paralegal. How dare you talk back to me? 3 years into my marriage, on Thanksgiving Day, my mother-in-law struck the back of my hand with a heavy silver serving spoon. My hand swelled into an angry red welt, but my husband just stared at the floor, saying nothing. Whose family do you even come from to be telling us how things should be? My sister-in-law sneered, just before my mother-in-law's palm cracked across my cheek. Get out. I want a divorce now. That night, I was thrown out without even a chance to pack a bag. 6 months later, however, my father-in-law arrived for a settlement meeting at one of New York City's most prestigious white shoe law firms. When the conference room door opened, I calmly handed him my business card. The color drained from his face as he read it. What exactly happened in those 6 months? Before our story begins, if you could hit the like and subscribe button and leave a comment telling us where you're listening from, we'll send a little bit of happiness your way. A heavy silence hung in the cold federal courtroom. In the defendant's chair sat a middle-aged man, once the proud CEO of a mid-sized corporation, now hunched over, his shoulders trembling. His suit was deeply wrinkled, and his hands shook uncontrollably. In the front row of the gallery, a woman dripping in jewelry was clutching her head in her hands. The gold rings on her fingers and the thick necklace around her neck glinted coldly under the fluorescent lights. She sobbed, muttering, "This can't be happening. This can't be." The judge shuffled his papers. "Does the defendant have a final statement?" The man at the defendant's table staggered to his feet. The commanding presence that once dominated boardrooms was gone. In a choked voice, he pleaded, "Your Honor, please, just give me one more chance. Please, just this once." Across the courtroom, a young woman sitting quietly in the gallery closed her eyes. She wore a simple, elegant business suit, her face free of makeup. A faint smile touched her lips, not a smile of joy, but something more like a long-held sigh finally being released. Her name was Evelyn. She was a 3-4-year-old attorney. Evelyn slowly opened her eyes, her thoughts drifting back to the day it all began. It was 2 years ago, on Thanksgiving. In her in-law's kitchen, Evelyn was struck on the hand with a serving spoon. Her mother-in-law had swung it with such force that the skin broke and blood welled up. But that wasn't what truly hurt. That night, she was cast out onto the cold street without so much as a coat. The last words she heard were, "Who do you think you are? Trying to act like you belong in this family. You're just a paralegal." She never imagined those words would lead her to this very courtroom. Evelyn looked back at the defendant, her former father-in-law, or rather, just the defendant now. The woman sobbing beside him was her former mother-in-law, the very person who had treated her like an animal. The judge spoke again. "The defendant's final statement is concluded. Sentencing will take place in 1 week. This court is adjourned." The sound of the gavel echoed bang, bang, bang. The gallery erupted in murmurs. But Evelyn remained seated, her gaze fixed on a distant point. It had all started 3 years ago. The day she truly believed in love. The day she thought money and background didn't matter. The day she simply wanted to be loved for who she was. Stepping out of the courthouse, Evelyn paused and looked up at the sky. It was a brilliant, cloudless blue. She whispered, "Mom, it's almost over." It had been 3 years. 3 years of wanting to be loved not as someone's daughter or as an heiress, but just as Evelyn. But in those 3 years, she hadn't received love. She had received humiliation, contempt, and in the end, a bleeding hand in the cold pavement of the street. Her phone buzzed in her purse. The screen read, "Dad." "Hi, Dad," she answered. A low, warm voice came through the receiver. "Evelyn, is the trial over?" "Yes, just now. Sentencing is in a week. You did well. Let's get dinner. I'll send a car." Evelyn smiled faintly. "Dad, do you remember what you said on my wedding day?" "What was that?" "You said if I was ever in trouble, you'd come get me." I just laughed it off back then. There was a brief silence. Then Robert Hayes' voice returned, heavy with regret. "Evelyn, I'm so sorry. I should have come for you sooner." "No, Dad. I was the one who insisted on staying. It was my choice." Evelyn walked slowly down the courthouse steps, the warm sun on her face. 3 years ago, she'd had no time to feel the sun. She was too busy trying to please her in-laws, catering to her husband, blinded by a desperate need to be loved. She stopped and looked back at the towering courthouse. Inside, her father-in-law had been begging for mercy, and her mother-in-law had been tearing her hair out. 3 years ago, her mother-in-law's voice echoed in her memory. "Is this gravy? It tastes like wallpaper paste." Then, the sharp crack of the serving spoon against her hand. The blood. Evelyn shook her head, determined to no longer be a prisoner of that memory. It was 3 years, she said softly to herself. For 3 years, I wasn't a person to you. I was just a maid for your house, a servant for your son, some pathetic creature who crawled out of a poor family. She turned and looked ahead. A black sedan was parked at the curb, the car her father had sent. As she walked toward it, she whispered, "But you know what, Carol? Do you have any idea who I am?" A slight smile graced her lips. The sunlight illuminated her face. The woman from 3 years ago, who had hidden everything for love, was gone. Standing here now was Evelyn Hayes, an heiress to and partner at Hayes and Sterling, one of New York's most powerful law firms. It all started 3 years ago, the day Evelyn chose love. 3 years ago, Evelyn's life was completely different. She was an attorney at Hayes and Sterling, one of the city's elite big law firms. But she wasn't just any lawyer. She was the only daughter of its founding partner, Robert Hayes. She was the heiress to a 30% stake in the firm and lived in a luxurious penthouse on the Upper East Side. But she was always lonely. At 28, she fell deeply in love with a man she met. A classmate from law school. He was kind and always listened to her. For the first time, she opened her heart. But a year later, she overheard him on the phone. "Dude, she's Robert Hayes' daughter. If I play my cards right, I'm set for life." Evelyn froze, her legs giving out from under her. All the kindness, the attention, everything she believed was love, shattered in an instant. After that, she gave up on dating. She gave up on trusting people. Whenever someone approached her, she suspected they were only after her money. She saw a calculator clicking behind every smile. 3 years passed. Evelyn turned 31 and was still alone. Then one day, a friend from college introduced her to a man. "Evelyn, this guy is different. He's the son of a CEO of a pretty successful food company, but he's really down to earth." Evelyn went with low expectations, assuming he'd be just like the others. But Daniel was different. On their first date, he told her, "Honestly, I'm not that interested in taking over my dad's company. I want to build something of my own. I just don't know what yet." His words moved her. There was no bragging, no pretense. He was just honest. On their second date, Daniel asked what she did for a living. "So, Evelyn, what do you do?" She hesitated. She was afraid that if she said she was an attorney at Hayes and Sterling, everything would change. So she lied. "Oh, me? I'm a paralegal at a small law office in Queens." Daniel just nodded and smiled. "Wow, legal work. You must be really meticulous. That sounds like a great fit." That was it. He didn't press further or show any disappointment. In that moment, Evelyn felt her heart flutter. Their dates continued, and Daniel was consistently genuine. Instead of expensive restaurants, he remembered she liked a small noodle shop in the village. He sent her short thinking of you texts on busy days. Slowly, Evelyn began to open up, thinking that maybe, just maybe, this man was different. 6 months later, Daniel confessed his feelings. "Evelyn, I'm falling for you. I don't care what you do or where you work. I just like you for you." Tears welled in Evelyn's eyes. It felt real. At least, she believed it was real then. But there was a problem. She was still hiding her true identity. She couldn't keep it a secret forever, especially if they started talking about marriage. She went to her father. Robert Hayes was reading in his study. He took off his glasses as she entered. "Evelyn, what is it?" She sat down across from him and began carefully. "Dad, I've met someone I want to marry." Robert's eyebrows rose slightly. "Oh, who is he?" "His family owns Miller Foods, a mid-sized food company. His name is Daniel Miller." Robert thought for a moment. He'd heard of Miller Foods. Not a massive corporation, but a solid, profitable business. "Evelyn, does he know who you are?" She shook her head. "No. I told him I was a paralegal at a small firm." Robert's expression hardened. "Evelyn, that's not right. If you're going to get married, you have to be honest." Evelyn was silent for a moment, then spoke softly. "Dad, do you remember what happened when I was 28? A shadow crossed Robert's face. Of course, he remembered. The night his daughter came home in tears. "That man, he was only with me for the money. For your firm. For your wealth." Evelyn's voice trembled. "Dad, this time, I want to be loved for real. Not as the daughter of Robert Hayes, but just as me. As Evelyn." Robert looked at his daughter for a long time. Tears were gathering in her eyes. His resolve wavered. "Evelyn, What if you get hurt? It's okay, Dad. This is my choice. Even if I get hurt, I won't regret it. Robert let out a long sigh and slowly nodded. All right, if this is what you truly want, I'll help you. A bright smile spread across Evelyn's face. Thank you, Dad. And so, the wedding preparations began. They had a small, intimate destination wedding. They told Daniel's family that Evelyn's family ran a modest import-export business. Robert Hayes played the part of an ordinary middle-class businessman. On the wedding day, he walked his daughter down the aisle. Evelyn, in her white dress, was beaming. As he placed her hand in Daniel's, Robert whispered in her ear, Evelyn, if you're ever in trouble, you call me. I'll come get you. Evelyn smiled reassuringly. Don't worry, Dad. I'm going to be happy. Robert managed a bittersweet smile, looking at the man who would be his son-in-law, silently praying he wouldn't break his daughter's heart. He had no idea that in 3 years, he would have to come and get her. After the wedding, Evelyn began her new life. She took a leave of absence from her position at Hayes and Sterling and started working part-time as a paralegal at a small law office, just as she'd claimed. Everything seemed perfect. She saw her husband off to work every morning and had a warm dinner waiting for him every night. It was an ordinary, but precious life. Evelyn was happy, at least, until the first holiday season arrived. Her first Thanksgiving as a married woman was approaching. A week beforehand, Evelyn started practicing her cooking. She watched YouTube tutorials on how to make the perfect Thanksgiving feast and carefully selected the best ingredients at the market. A heritage turkey, sourdough stuffing, gravy from scratch, 5 different side dishes. She had never cooked a meal this elaborate, but she was determined to do her best. On Thanksgiving morning, Evelyn woke at 5 a.m. She arrived at her in-laws' house and went straight to the kitchen. Her mother-in-law, Carol, was on the living room sofa, watching TV. Good morning, Carol. Happy Thanksgiving, Evelyn said politely. Carol merely grunted, her eyes still glued to the screen. Evelyn put on an apron and got to work. She brined the turkey, prepped the vegetables, and started on the sides. Her hands were a constant blur of motion. About 2 hours later, her sister-in-law, Jessica, emerged from her room, still in her pajamas with messy hair. She glanced into the kitchen and scoffed. Wow, what's all this? Did my mom make you do this at the crack of dawn? Evelyn smiled. No, I wanted to. It's our first Thanksgiving together. Jessica didn't reply, just grabbed a drink from the fridge and went back to the living room. Evelyn tried not to let it bother her. When lunchtime came, she set the table with a trembling heart. The turkey was golden brown, the sides were vibrant and colorful. It turned out well, she thought with relief. Her father-in-law, George, sat down at the head of the table. Carol sat opposite him. Her husband, Daniel, gave her a small, encouraging smile. Buoyed by his look, Evelyn said softly, Please, enjoy the meal. George picked up his fork without a word. Carol scrutinized each dish before taking a piece of turkey. She chewed with a blank expression. Evelyn held her breath. Carol put down her fork. Her voice was ice. What is this? Evelyn's heart sank. I'm sorry? This turkey, it's as dry as sawdust. Is this what you serve at your family's table? Carol's voice rose. Evelyn's face burned with shame. She didn't know what she'd done wrong. I'm so sorry, Carol. I'm still new to this. New to this? What did your mother teach you? Anything at all? The words felt like a knife in her chest. Your mother. Evelyn's mother had passed away when she was 20. Carol had no idea how much those words hurt. Evelyn bit her lip, fighting back tears. Jessica took a bite of turkey and grimaced. Mom's right. This is awful. Maybe you should take some cooking classes, Evelyn. This is just sad. Jessica's tone was dripping with ridicule. Evelyn lowered her head, unable to think of a response. Her father-in-law said nothing, just continued eating as if nothing was happening. Evelyn looked at her husband. Daniel, please, say something. Her eyes begged him. But Daniel just kept his head down, shoveling food into his mouth, deliberately avoiding her gaze. After the meal, Evelyn went to the kitchen to do the dishes. Her hands were shaking, tears streamed down her face, mixing with the dishwater. It's just the first time, she told herself. Next time will be better. Daniel came into the kitchen. He stood behind her and asked gently, Evelyn, are you okay? She wiped her tears and turned around. Daniel, what did I do wrong? I tried so hard. He wrapped his arms around her. I'm sorry. My mom's just... really particular about food. But she didn't have to bring up my family. Evelyn's voice quivered. Daniel looked uncomfortable. Evelyn, that's just how she talks. She didn't mean anything by it. Evelyn looked at her husband. Do you really believe that? Her eyes asked. Daniel, could you just say one word to your mom for me? Tell her how hard I worked. His expression tightened. After a moment of silence, he finally spoke. Evelyn, I'm sorry, but I can't. It's hard to talk back to my parents. In that instant, Evelyn felt a part of her heart go cold. The words I understand were stuck in her throat. Daniel held her again. Just be patient. It's the first time. It'll get better. Evelyn closed her eyes in his embrace. Will it really get better? Will time really fix this? She wanted to believe him. She had to. This was the marriage she had chosen. That night, lying in bed, she stared at the ceiling. It was just the first time. I just need to try harder. I'll learn to cook better, figure out what my mother-in-law likes. Next year, will be different. She looked at her wedding ring, the date engraved on it shimmering faintly. She remembered the happiness of that day, her father holding her hand, Daniel's bright smile. I chose this marriage to be loved. If I just endure a little longer, it will get better. Evelyn closed her eyes. The first holiday had passed, but she had no idea that this was only the beginning, that over the next 2 years, she would endure far deeper wounds. And at the end of it all, she would have to make a choice, to continue to endure or to finally stand up. 2 years into the marriage, Evelyn was still working part-time at the small law office. Her days followed a routine. See her husband off, organize files at the office, come home to cook dinner. It was a normal life, at least on the surface. But inside, her heart was slowly fracturing. Her mother-in-law, Carol, would show up unannounced 2 or 3 times a week. The sound of the doorbell made Evelyn's heart pound. What will she criticize today? What will I be accused of doing wrong? One afternoon, Carol arrived just as Evelyn had finished cleaning. Carol, welcome. Carol walked in without a word, her eyes scanning the living room like a hotel inspector. She ran a finger along a windowsill and examined the tip. There's dust here. Evelyn's face flushed. I'm sorry. I must have missed it. Missed it? If you had eyes, you would have seen it. What kind of family did you come from to be so inept? It was always about her family. Evelyn bit her lip, knowing there was no point in responding. Carol marched to the kitchen, opened the refrigerator, and started pulling out containers. What is this? Is this all the food you have? What is my poor Daniel eating? I was going to go shopping tomorrow, Carol. Tomorrow? So what are you feeding him tonight? Ramen noodles? Evelyn bowed her head. Any excuse would only make it worse. Silence was her only defense. Carol left after an hour of critiques. As soon as the door closed, Evelyn sank to the floor, her legs giving out. This became a regular occurrence. Carol always found something to criticize: the cleaning, the laundry, Evelyn's clothes. Nothing she did was ever good enough. Her sister-in-law, Jessica, was no better. One day, she came over carrying a large shopping bag from a luxury brand. She flopped onto the sofa and pulled out a new handbag. Evelyn, look at this. Isn't it gorgeous? I just bought it yesterday. Evelyn forced a smile. Yes, it's beautiful. Do you know how much it was? $5,000. Dad bought it for me. Jessica admired the bag from every angle, then turned to Evelyn. So, haven't you bought anything nice for yourself lately? Evelyn shook her head. No, I don't really need anything. Jessica smirked. Don't need it or can't afford it? I can't imagine a paralegal's salary goes very far. Evelyn's expression hardened. Jessica continued, oblivious. It's a shame, really. If you had a real career, you could afford nice things like this. Evelyn said nothing. A hot anger simmered inside her, but she held it back. If she lost her temper, she knew Jessica would run straight to Carol. That night, Evelyn cautiously brought it up with Daniel. Honey, I'm having a really hard time lately. Daniel looked up from his phone. Why? What's wrong? Your mom comes over so often and criticizes everything. And Jessica was here today and said. She told him what had happened. Daniel sighed. Evelyn, you know my mom is just critical. And Jessica has no filter. I know, but it's happening so often. It's wearing me down. I'm only human. Her voice trembled. Daniel took her hand. Just be patient a little longer. I'll try to talk to them. Really? Yeah. But things are a little complicated right now. Dad's company is going through a rough patch, so everyone's on edge. Just give it a little time. Evelyn nodded. If her husband was going to intervene, maybe things would get better. She clung to that hope. But Daniel's promise to talk to them was never kept. A month passed, then two, and nothing changed. Carol still came, and Jessica still sneered. 3 years into the marriage, during a family dinner, her father-in-law, George, suddenly spoke to her. Evelyn. She was startled. He rarely addressed her directly. Yes, George. It's been almost 3 years. Any news on a baby? The table fell silent. Evelyn's face turned beet red. We're not quite ready yet. Not ready? What's there to be ready for? You should have kids while you're young. What have you been doing for 3 years in this family? Besides failing to produce an heir, is that paralegal job of yours so demanding? His tone was sharp. Evelyn's mouth went dry. She glanced at Daniel. He was just eating, saying nothing. Again, Carol chimed in. That's what I keep telling her, dear. But this daughter-in-law of ours never listens. Tears welled in Evelyn's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Crying would only make her look weaker. That night, back home, she locked herself in the bathroom and stared at her reflection. The face in the mirror was a stranger. Where was the smiling bride from 3 years ago? She cried silently. Her phone rang. It was her dad. She quickly wiped her eyes and answered. Hello? Evelyn. It's Dad. Have you eaten? His warm voice was almost her undoing. Tears threatened to spill again, but she forced a cheerful tone. Yeah, I ate. You? I did. Evelyn, how are you doing? Is everything okay? She hesitated. Should she tell him the truth? That she was miserable? But if she did, he would come for her immediately, and everything would come out her lies. Her secret. The marriage would be over. She wasn't ready to give up yet. I'm fine, Dad. Everything's good. Really? Your voice sounds a little tired. Oh, just a long day. Don't worry. After hanging up, she stood frozen, a wave of guilt washing over her for lying to her father. Dana was already asleep. She went to the living room and sat on the sofa in the dark, looking at the faint glint of her wedding ring. It was my choice, she whispered. 3 years ago, she had chosen love. She had hidden her wealth and background to be loved for herself. Just a little longer. It will get better. She told herself that if she just endured, Carol would soften, and Daniel would find his courage. But a small voice in the back of her mind whispered, Will it really? You've endured for 3 years. What's changed? She tried to ignore it, taking a deep breath. The moonlight streamed through the window. She was alone, so utterly alone in this house, in this marriage. Still, she didn't give up. Not yet. She had no idea that the upcoming Thanksgiving would change everything. As her third Thanksgiving approached, Evelyn was determined to make it perfect. She wanted to redeem herself for past failures, to finally earn her mother-in-law's approval and be accepted as part of the family. On Thanksgiving morning, she was up at 4 a.m. Before her alarm, she dressed quietly in the dark, careful not to wake her husband. She arrived at her in-laws at 5 a.m. while the sky was still black. She turned on the kitchen lights, put on an apron, and repeated her mantra. I have to be perfect today. Turkey, gravy, stuffing, 5 sides, 3 kinds of pie. She had practiced the menu for a week, reading recipes and watching videos until she could do it in her sleep. This time, she was confident. The hours ticked by. 6 a.m., 7 a.m., 8 a.m. She moved nonstop. She cut her finger, and hot oil splattered on her arm, leaving red welts, but she didn't stop. Around 9 a.m., Carol entered the kitchen. Happy Thanksgiving, Carol, Evelyn said brightly. Carol ignored the greeting, her eyes critically scanning the food. Evelyn watched, her heart pounding. Please, just say it's okay this time. Carol lifted the lid off the gravy boat, dipped a spoon in, and tasted it. Evelyn held her breath. Carol's face contorted in disgust. What is this? Evelyn's world tilted. I don't understand. This gravy? Is it even gravy? It's just brown water with lumps in it. It's disgusting. I'm sorry, Carol. I can remake it. Before she could finish, Carol raised the heavy, silver serving spoon and brought it down hard on the back of Evelyn's hand. Thwack. A dull, sickening sound. For a second, Evelyn couldn't process what had happened. All she felt was a searing pain spreading through her hand. She looked down. The skin was broken, and blood was trickling out, dripping onto the pristine kitchen floor. Carol! Her voice trembled. Carol slammed the spoon down. You call yourself a wife? You can't even make a decent gravy? This isn't food. It's slop. Evelyn clutched her bleeding hand, stunned. For 3 years, she had endured insults, condescension, and ridicule. But this was too much. For the first time, she talked back. Carol, you can't do this. Carol's eyes widened, shocked that the docile daughter-in-law was finally challenging her. What did you say? No matter what, you have no right to hit me. I'm bleeding. Evelyn's voice shook, but her gaze was steady. 3 years of resentment bubbled up to the surface. Just then, Jessica walked in. She took in the scene with wide eyes. Mom, what's going on? Look at this, Carol shrieked. Your sister-in-law is talking back to me. Jessica looked Evelyn up and down, a smirk on her face. Evelyn, you're just a paralegal. Who do you think you are? Talking back to an elder. That word again. Paralegal. It pierced Evelyn's heart like a shard of ice. Jessica continued. Honestly, what kind of family do you even come from? You think your father's little import business gives you the right to act like this in our house? Evelyn bit her lip. The pain in her heart was worse than the pain in her hand. These people had never seen her as a human being. She was just a servant, a baby maker, a charity case from a poor family. That's all she ever was to them. George came into the kitchen, drawn by the noise. He sighed. What is it now? Honey, look, Carol cried. She's defying me. George looked at Evelyn with cold eyes. Evelyn, don't make a scene on a holiday. Be quiet. Evelyn was speechless. She was the one bleeding, but she was the one at fault. She looked for her husband. Daniel was standing at the kitchen entrance. He must have seen everything. Daniel, she called out, her voice cracking. Daniel, my hand is bleeding. Your mother hit me with a spoon. Daniel said nothing. He just stared at the floor. Daniel, don't you have anything to say? Tears streamed down Evelyn's face. For 3 years, she had believed in him, believed he would be on her side, that he would protect her. Daniel's lips moved, as if he was about to speak. Evelyn looked at him with desperate hope. But in the end, no words came out. He just lowered his head further. In that moment, something inside Evelyn died. The tiny flame she had protected for 3 years, the hope of being loved. The belief that things would get better was extinguished. Carol strode towards her and raised her hand. Slap. The sound echoed in the kitchen. Get out. I want a divorce. Carol screamed. I've put up with you for 3 years, and this is the thanks I get? We're done. George spoke coldly. Pack your things and be gone by tomorrow. And don't even think about alimony. What have you ever done for us? Evelyn stood on trembling legs. A bleeding hand, a stinging cheek. But the real pain was deeper. She looked one last time at her husband. Daniel was still staring at the floor, unable to say a single word in her defense. The last bit of light in Evelyn's eyes went out. 3 years. For 3 years, she just wanted to be loved. Without her money, without her background, without her father's name, just as Evelyn. But these people had never seen her. They only saw her job, her family's supposed lack of wealth, her utility. No amount of effort would ever change that. Evelyn untied her apron, folded it neatly, and placed it on the counter. Blood was still dripping from her hand. Fine, she said, her voice surprisingly calm. I'll leave. She walked out of the kitchen and towards the front door. Behind her, she heard Carol yell, Good. Get lost. And don't ever show your face here again. She didn't look back. She put on her shoes and opened the door. A blast of cold winter air hit her face. As the door clicked shut behind her, she whispered, It was 3 years. Tears streamed down her face, but she made no sound. She just walked, with no destination in mind, her blood leaving tiny red dots on the sidewalk. After a while, she stopped and pulled out her phone. The screen lit up with the word, Dad. Her hand shook. For 3 years, she had hidden everything, not wanting to worry him. Telling herself this was her choice and her responsibility, she couldn't hide anymore. She pressed the call button. After 2 rings, her father's voice came through. Evelyn? She opened her mouth and, for the first time, told the truth. Dad, I'm not going to take it anymore. There was a moment of stunned silence on the other end. Then, his voice, firm and urgent. Evelyn, where are you? On the main road near their house. Don't move. I'm coming. The call ended. Evelyn lowered her phone and looked at the sky. Stars were beginning to appear in the cold, winter twilight. She whispered, Mom, I'm done being patient. A breeze blew, as if to dry her tears. She knew, in that moment, that tonight, everything was about to change. That Thanksgiving night, a cold wind whipped around Evelyn as she stood on the side of the road. Her hand was still bleeding, her cheek throbbed, and her whole body shivered. But strangely, her mind was calm. For 3 years, she had endured. She had wanted to be loved not as the daughter of Robert Hayes, but just as Evelyn. Today, she finally understood. To them, she had never been a person at all. She had been thrown out in thin clothes, without a coat or a purse. All she had was her phone. She had just called her father. It had taken her 3 years to find the courage to say that one sentence. "Dad, I'm not going to take it anymore." She crouched down on the sidewalk, her legs too weak to stand. Passers-by gave her strange looks, but she didn't care. She just stared at the full moon. "Mom, they hurt me today," she whispered internally. Her mother had passed away when she was 20, leaving her with her father. Robert Hayes was a busy man, but he had always been endlessly gentle with his only daughter. What would her mother have said? She probably would have told her to leave long ago, scolded her for enduring so much, for not telling her father sooner. A fresh wave of tears fell. Just then, a black sedan sped towards her and pulled up to the curb. The back door opened, and a man got out. It was her father, Robert Hayes. At 66, he was the commanding head of Hayes and Sterling, a name that carried immense weight in the legal world. But at that moment, he was just a father, worried sick about his daughter. The sight of Evelyn, crouched and shivering, made his face harden. He saw the bloody hand, the red, swollen cheek. He understood immediately. Evelyn. He knelt in front of her, not caring that his expensive suit trousers were getting dirty. "Dad," she looked up, and the dam broke. A flood of tears she had held back for 3 years poured out. "Dad, I tried. I tried for 3 years." Robert said nothing, just pulled her into a tight embrace. She sobbed like a child in his arms. Two men in dark suits got out of the car, his security detail, and stood watch silently. After a long while, Evelyn pulled back. "Dad, I'm sorry. I lied to you. For 3 years. I told you I was fine." Robert cupped her face in his hands, gently tracing the welt on her cheek. "Evelyn, don't you ever apologize to me. I'm the one who's sorry. I should have come for you sooner." "No, it was my choice," she said, her voice trembling. Robert's eyes fell on her bleeding hand, and he clenched his jaw. "Who did this? Who did this to my daughter?" Evelyn was silent for a moment. "Carol. She hit me with a serving spoon, because the gravy was lumpy." Robert's gaze turned glacial. This was not the gentle father she knew. This was the look of a litigator who had dominated New York courtrooms for decades. "And she slapped me. For talking back." "And your husband?" Evelyn gave a bitter smile. "He said nothing. Not once in 3 years did he ever stand up for me." Robert helped her to her feet, took off his overcoat, and draped it over her shoulders. "Get in the car. We need to get that hand looked at." She leaned on him as she got into the plush leather interior of the car. It was only then that the reality of what had happened truly sank in. She had been thrown out. The car pulled away, and she watched her in-laws' affluent suburban neighborhood recede in the distance. She had lived there for 3 years, waking up at dawn to cook and clean, enduring insults with a forced smile, all because she wanted to be loved. Now, it was over. Robert spoke, his voice low and dangerous. "Evelyn, I'm stepping in. I won't let them get away with what they did to you." She looked at her father. His eyes were burning with a rage she had never seen before. But she shook her head. "No, Dad. I'll do it myself." Robert looked at her, surprised. Her expression had changed. The weeping woman from moments ago was gone. "I want to finish this with my own hands," she said. "I want to be the one to make them pay for the last 3 years." Robert studied her for a moment, then nodded slowly. "All right. If that's what you want, I'll support you. Whatever you need, just ask." She turned back to the window. Her former home was now just a distant speck of light. "Dad, do you know Miller Foods? George's company." "Yes. Do you think it's a clean business?" Robert's eyes narrowed. He understood where this was going. "Why? Do you know something?" Evelyn's smile was grim. "Living in that house for 3 years, you overhear things. My father-in-law on the phone, my sister-in-law bragging. Something always felt wrong." She continued, her gaze fixed on the passing city lights. "I heard them talking about stiffing their suppliers and fudging expiration dates on their products. I also know Jessica uses the company credit card for all her designer shopping sprees." Robert nodded. That's more than enough to start an investigation. Dad, I want to come back to Hayes and Sterling. She looked him straight in the eye. My law license is still active. I only took a leave of absence. Robert looked into his daughter's eyes. This was not the girl who had cried about wanting to be loved 3 years ago. This was a woman forged in fire, her eyes filled with steely resolve. Of course. Your office has always been waiting for you. Evelyn looked out the window again. The lights of Manhattan spread out before them. She whispered, Carol, you hit my hand with a serving spoon that day. I'm about to show you just how expensive that spoon was. Robert watched his daughter's profile. She looked so much like her mother, gentle on the surface, but with an unbreakable will once she made up her mind. Evelyn, yes? I told you once, if you were ever in trouble, I'd come get you. She looked at him. I came and got you tonight. It's time to come home now as my daughter. Tears welled in her eyes again, but this time they weren't of sorrow. Yes, Dad, I'm home. The car sped towards the heart of the city. The full moon seemed to follow them. Evelyn closed her eyes, remembering her wedding day. Her father's words, if you're ever in trouble, you call me. I'll come get you. She had laughed then, never imagining it would come to this. But he had meant every word. She opened her eyes and looked ahead. This was the beginning. She was no longer hiding. She was Evelyn Hayes, daughter of Robert Hayes and an attorney at one of the most powerful firms in the country. And she was about to show that family just how catastrophic their mistake had been. The car stopped in front of the Hayes and Sterling Tower, a skyscraper that pierced the night sky. Evelyn stepped out and looked up at the building. I'm back, she said, a real smile touching her lips for the first time in 3 years. The real fight was about to begin. After that night, Evelyn was a different person. The day after Thanksgiving, she walked into the offices of Hayes and Sterling for the first time in 3 years. A buzz went through the firm. The chairman's daughter was back. But Evelyn ignored the whispers and walked straight to her old office. A thin layer of dust covered her desk. She opened the window, sat down, and turned on her computer. A bandage was still wrapped around the back of her hand, a constant reminder of why she was here. She would not forget. In the search bar, she typed, Miller Foods. 6 months of preparation had begun. Hayes and Sterling was a legal powerhouse. With over 200 lawyers, it boasted the highest win rates in corporate litigation and criminal defense. The firm also had its own elite in-house investigations team, specialists in uncovering corporate malfeasance. Evelyn went to her father. Dad, I need to use the investigations team. Robert didn't hesitate. Take them. You have my full support. She summoned the head of the team and laid out everything she had overheard in the last 3 years. I heard them talk about chronically late payments to their suppliers and about mislabeling expiration dates. And I know my sister-in-law uses the company card for personal luxury shopping. The investigator nodded, taking notes. We'll dig into it, Miss Hayes. 2 months later, the first report landed on her desk. As she read through it, her eyes grew wider and wider. Violation of fair payment practices. For the last decade, Miller Foods had systematically delayed payments to its suppliers, with an average delay of 6 months. Some smaller companies hadn't been paid in over a year. Evelyn gritted her teeth. FDA violations. Miller Foods regularly relabeled products nearing their expiration dates and shipped them out as new. They also engaged in fraudulent, made in the USA labeling, using cheaper ingredients from overseas. Her hands trembled. She had no idea her father-in-law's company was this corrupt. Kickbacks and bribery. To secure shelf space in major supermarket chains, Miller Foods paid kickbacks to purchasing managers, inflating invoices and splitting the difference. Embezzlement. All of Jessica's designer bags, clothes, and international vacations were paid for with the corporate credit card. Over the past 5 years, the total came to over $300,000. Evelyn closed the file and stared out her window. For 3 years, they had treated her as a worthless, poor girl who had married up. But in reality, they were the ones cheating suppliers, deceiving consumers, and stealing from their own company. So, George, she thought, a cold smile on her lips, you were stiffing your employees on their paychecks to buy your daughter designer bags. Meanwhile, at the Miller household, life went on as usual. Carol was hosting a luncheon for her friends at the local country club. So, Carol, how is your daughter-in-law? One of them asked. Carol waved a dismissive hand, her rings flashing. Oh, that one? I got rid of her. You did? Why? She just wasn't our class, dear. A paralegal. Can you imagine? She never fit in. Her friends nodded sympathetically. I gave her 3 years. But the way she behaved on Thanksgiving. Couldn't even make a decent gravy, and then had the nerve to talk back. My Daniel needs to marry a proper girl this time. The daughter of a doctor or a lawyer. Perhaps. Carol smiled, pleased with herself, completely oblivious to the storm gathering on the horizon. Evelyn was already moving to the next phase. Using the report, she began contacting the victims. The suppliers Miller Foods had cheated. Her first stop was a small packaging company in New Jersey. When she handed the owner her business card, his eyes went wide. Hayes and Sterling? Why would a huge firm like you be interested in a small company like ours? Evelyn spoke calmly. You do business with Miller Foods, correct? Have they been paying you on time? The man's face soured. On time? They're 8 months behind. If we complain, they threaten to cut us off. What can a small business like ours do? We can represent you, Evelyn said. Pro bono. The man stared at her, stunned. Really? But why would you help us? Evelyn paused, then said quietly, let's just say I have my own score to settle with that company. She visited 12 more companies, all victims of Miller Foods' predatory practices. She became their legal counsel. For more months passed. Her desk was now buried under mountains of documents related to the case. One night, her father stopped by her office. Still here? Almost done, Dad. He looked at the piles of files. You've built a strong case. It's more than enough, she said, picking up a thick binder. I'm filing the complaint with the U.S. Attorney's Office tomorrow. Robert looked at his daughter. Her eyes were no longer those of a wounded young woman. They were the cold, calculating eyes of a seasoned litigator. No regrets? None, she replied. The next morning, Evelyn filed a formal complaint with the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York against George Miller, CEO of Miller Foods. The charges were extensive: racketeering based on systematic supplier fraud, violations of FDA regulations, bribery, and embezzlement. Walking out of the prosecutor's office, she felt a weight lift from her shoulders. It had begun. For 3 years, they thought they could treat her however they wanted because of her supposed background. They were about to learn how wrong they were. A week later, the prosecutor's office called. A federal investigation into Miller Foods was officially underway. Evelyn hung up the phone and looked out her window. Soon, her father-in-law would call, begging for a settlement. And when he did, she would have a simple reply. Come to Hayes and Sterling. I'll meet with you personally. A chilling smile played on her lips. The storm was coming. When the federal investigation began, Miller Foods was thrown into chaos. FBI agents raided the corporate offices, seizing documents, computers, and interviewing employees. George Miller initially dismissed it as a nuisance, something a few high-priced lawyers could handle. But the evidence against him was overwhelming and meticulously organized, as if someone had spent a great deal of time preparing it. Who filed the complaint? George demanded of his lawyer. The suppliers, the lawyer said grimly. But the real problem is who's representing them. Who? Hayes and Sterling. George's face paled. Hayes and Sterling? One of the most feared firms in the country. That's impossible. Why would they take on a case like this for a bunch of small-time suppliers? There's no money in it. I don't know, but my sources say the firm sought them out and is representing them pro bono. George couldn't understand it. Something was wrong, but he had to act. Set up a meeting. I need to talk to them about a settlement. A few days later, George Miller walked into the lobby of the Hayes and Sterling Tower. The sheer scale of the place, the marble floors, the modern art, the quiet hum of power was intimidating. He was escorted to a conference room. The attorney in charge will be with you shortly. He sat on the plush leather sofa, his heart pounding. How much would it cost to make this go away? 10 minutes later, the door opened. George looked up and froze. Standing in the doorway was a young woman in an impeccably tailored suit. Her hair was pulled back neatly, her face determined. He knew that face. He had seen it every day for 3 years. His face turned ashen. Evelyn? It was his former daughter-in-law. The one he had allowed his family to throw out on Thanksgiving night. What? What are you doing here? He stammered. Evelyn walked silently to the opposite side of the massive conference table, sat down, and slid a business card across the polished wood. With a trembling hand, George picked it up. His eyes widened in horror. Evelyn Hayes. Partner. Hayes and Sterling. What is this? He whispered. I was never a paralegal, George, she said, her voice flat. And my family doesn't run a small import-export business. She gestured towards the floor-to-ceiling window, where the firm's logo was visible on the building across the plaza. This is my family's business. George's jaw dropped. Hayes and Sterling was her family? That meant she was Robert Hayes's daughter. No, it can't be, he breathed. Why not? Evelyn asked, tilting her head. We lived under the same roof for 3 years, and not once did you or your family bother to ask who I really was. He was speechless. She was right. He had never cared. She was just a utility, a servant for his son. You all called me a worthless paralegal from a poor family. You thought that gave you the right to treat me like dirt, to hit me, to throw me away. Her voice was calm, but each word was a hammer blow. George's face was ghostly white. He finally understood the magnitude of his mistake. Evelyn, Miss Hayes, he said, his voice shaking. I was wrong. Please, I'm begging you. Give me a chance. He started to rise, to get on his knees. Don't, she said sharply. He froze. A settlement? There will be no settlement. She stood up. For 3 years, I was treated as less than human in your house. Your wife hit me, your daughter mocked me, and you despised me. And my husband? Your son? He never once defended me. For the first time, a flicker of emotion entered her voice, the cold fury of 3 years of pain. There will be no settlement. I'm seeing this through to the end. She picked up her briefcase and walked to the door. With her hand on the handle, she looked back. Savior kneeling for the courtroom. The door clicked shut, leaving George Miller alone in the vast, empty room, clutching the business card that had just destroyed his world. Outside, Evelyn walked down the hallway, her steps firm, though her heart felt heavy. It was a victory, but a hollow one. She had wanted their love, their acceptance. She had endured so much for it. But it was all a lie. They had never cared about her, only about what they perceived her status to be. Tears pricked her eyes, but she fought them back. It wasn't over yet. When she returned to her office, her father was waiting. I heard George Miller was here. She nodded. He wanted to settle. And I refused. Robert looked at his daughter's face, noticing the slight redness around her eyes. Are you okay, Evelyn? She took a breath and managed a small smile. I'm okay, Dad. It's time to finally end this. The trial began a month later in the Southern District of New York. The courtroom was packed with reporters. Evelyn sat at the prosecution's table, calm and composed. Across the room, George Miller looked like a broken man. In the gallery sat his wife, Carol, and daughter Jessica, their faces pale with fear. The U.S. attorney read the indictment. The evidence was presented, witness after witness taking the stand to detail years of abuse and fraud at the hands of Miller Foods. The corporate credit card statements showing Jessica's lavish spending were displayed on a large screen. Suddenly, Carol leaped to her feet, pointing a trembling finger at Evelyn. It's all her fault. That witch. She tricked us. She ruined our family. Order in the court, the judge commanded, banging his gavel. Carol was forcibly removed, screaming threats as she was dragged out. Evelyn didn't even flinch. She had heard worse in her own home. The trial concluded. The prosecution recommended a sentence of 5 years. In his final statement, George Miller wept and begged for mercy. As Evelyn was leaving the courthouse, a voice called her name. It was Daniel, her ex-husband. He looked thin and haggard. Evelyn, he said, his voice cracking. I'm so sorry. I should have protected you. Please. Can we start over? She looked at the man she once loved, the man for whom she had endured 3 years of hell. She felt nothing. Daniel, she said, her voice even. For 3 years, you told me the same thing over and over again. Just be patient. Remember? He flinched. Well, now it's my turn to say it to you. Just be patient. This will all be over soon. She turned and walked away, not looking back. A week later, the sentence came down. George Miller was sentenced to 3 years in federal prison. Miller Foods was hit with a multi-million-dollar fine and a 6-month suspension of operations, effectively a death sentence for the business. It was over. She had won. But as Evelyn stood on the courthouse steps, she didn't feel the elation she expected. She felt a profound sense of emptiness. The trial wasn't just about revenge. It was a confirmation that for them, her love and sincerity had never mattered at all. A single tear rolled down her cheek. Then she wiped it away and stood up. A chapter of her life had closed. It was time to start a new one. 1 year later, Evelyn Hayes was a managing partner at Hayes and Sterling, the youngest in the firm's history. Her success in the Miller Foods case had silenced any doubters. The Miller family's life had been shattered. George was in prison. Miller Foods was bankrupt. The family home, the cars, the jewelry, all seized. Carol was living in a small, rented apartment on the outskirts of the city. Jessica, whose name was now notorious, was working at a convenience store. Daniel had found a low-level job in another state. One evening, as Evelyn was leaving the office late, she saw a woman cleaning the floors in the hallway. The woman looked up, and their eyes met. It was Carol. She was in a janitor's uniform, her face lined with hardship, her hands rough. Carol recognized her instantly and paled. Evelyn. I mean, Miss Hayes, she stammered, bowing her head. Please. I'm so sorry. Please. Forgive me. Evelyn looked at her for a long moment. Carol, she said, her voice soft but clear. Do you remember what you used to call me? A worthless little paralegal. You judged me by my job, by the money you thought I didn't have. You thought that gave you the right to treat me poorly. Carol couldn't speak. Well, now you're a janitor, Evelyn continued, her gaze unwavering. Does that mean I have the right to treat you poorly? By your logic, I should. Carol flinched as her own cruel words came back to haunt her. Evelyn sighed. A person's value isn't determined by their job, or their money, or their family. It's their character. It's how they treat others. I hope, for your sake, you finally understand that. She turned and walked away, not looking back as she heard Carol's quiet sobs. Down in the lobby, her father was waiting for her. Dad, what are you doing here? He smiled. I'm here to take you to dinner. And then, let's go visit your mother's grave. It's been a while. A genuine smile spread across Evelyn's face. Okay, Dad. They walked out of the building together into the cool night air. I didn't bring the car, he said. Let's take the bus. The route your mother always loved. Tears welled in Evelyn's eyes. She remembered those bus rides, her mother happily watching the city go by. She linked her arm through her father's. On the bus, they sat by the window, watching the city lights blur past. 4 years ago, she had gambled everything on love and lost. The pain was real, but she didn't regret it. That journey had taught her what real love, real family, truly was. She looked at her father. He was the one who had always been there, who promised to come get her, and who kept that promise. He was the one who loved her unconditionally. She squeezed his hand. Thank you, Dad. For what? For being my dad. He squeezed back, his eyes glistening. The bus drove on, bathed in the warm, fading light of the sunset. Evelyn closed her eyes and smiled. She was okay now. She was truly okay. A new morning was dawning. If this story resonated with you, even in a small way, we hope you'll visit us again. If you feel so inclined, please leave a kind word for our protagonist. Your kindness might just be the strength someone needs to face their tomorrow. We are here, wishing you the very best today. And always, thank you for listening.